The José Bretón case, or the Ruth and Jose case, is the name given to the events related to the disappearance and death of the siblings Ruth Bretón Ortiz, 6, and José Bretón Ortiz, 2, on October 8, 2011 in the city of Córdoba, Andalusia, Spain. Both were killed by their father, José Bretón Gómez, who burnt their corpses without leaving any identifiable remains of the children. The case received a level of high media coverage because the National Police's leading research official categorically denied after examination of the burnt remains that they could be human, classifying them as rodent bones. Anthropologist Francisco Etxeberria offered his assistance to Ruth Ortiz's accusation lawyer, disputing the previous conclusions and revealing the human nature of the remains. On July 22, 2013, the Audiencia Provincial of Córdoba sentenced José Bretón to 40 years in prison for double murder. The kinship, the premeditation, and the cruel character demonstrated by Bretón were aggravating circumstances. In March 2015, the sentence was reduced to a maximum of 25 years. Planning the murder. In order to carry out his plan, José Bretón decided that the most appropriate place would be the estate of his parents, known as Finca de las Quemadillas, in Córdoba. Also, he decided that the suitable date would be on October 8, 2011, because that weekend he would be with his children. For that purpose, he started a series of preparations. Thus, a medical psychiatrist who had already treated him 3 years before and with whom he had recently consulted had prescribed him the tranquilizers Orfidal and Motivin. José Bretón bought these on September 29, 2011, in order to be able to send the children to sleep and murder them easily. Between 5 and 7 October 2011, with the intent to make the corpses of his children disappear, José Bretón collected firewood and bought over 270 liters of diesel fuel in large quantities at a petrol station in Huelva. At the same time, José Bretón came up with an alibi for the disappearance of his children and decided to pretend that he had lost them in a park. In order to be able to offer some information about the alleged disappearance, he carried out a kind of experiment with his nephews, the children of his sister Catalina Bretón and his brother-in-law José Ortega, on the morning of October 6, 2011, leaving them on their own for a few moments when he was taking them to school. Course of the events. On October 7, 2011, José Bretón picked up his children in Huelva and went with them to Córdoba. They first went to his parents' house and then to his sister's house, where he left them. From there, he went to Las Quemadillas, his estate, to get the fuel he had bought that morning in Huelva out of his car's boot and leave it there. In addition, Bretón suggested to his siblings to go in the afternoon of October 8 to the City of Children with their respective children in order to gain a better cover for the lost simulation of Ruth and Jose. However, they didn't agree on the appointment completely. He told his mother that he wouldn't be able to go to her house for lunch on that same day as he was going to meet some friends, which was untrue. In the morning of October 8, José Bretón and his children went to Catalina's house, where Bretón stayed with them and his nephews until 1:30 p.m., while his sister and brother-in-law were doing some shopping. When they returned, José Bretón's brother-in-law took him and his children to the grandparents' house to pick up his car. Once there, José Bretón stopped by just long enough to make his family believe he was going to have lunch with some friends, which was false. When he left his parents' house, José Bretón, along with his 2 children, drove to Las Quemadillas with his car. During the journey, or when he arrived at the estate, he supplied both Ruth and Jose with an undetermined number of the tranquilizers Motivin and Orfidal in order to facilitate the children's total drowsiness and death. Once they arrived at the estate, at about 1:48 p.m. of that day, José Bretón phoned his wife again, without being able to contact her, so he decided to continue carrying out his purpose. Afterwards, according to what he had already planned and meditated, he prepared a kind of funeral pyre. He had already arranged its essential elements in a new place of the estate, among several orange trees, and without visibility from the outside. He laid his children down, It has been impossible to determine whether they were dead or alive. Together with a metal table with the board upright, covering practically the whole length of the miners and the pyre itself, and set a large bonfire. He quickly stoked the bonfire with firewood, about 250 kilograms, and gas oil, about 80 liters, which reached temperatures up to 1200 degs, achieving a similar effect to that of a crematorium. Given the magnitude of the temperature, the flesh of the children's bodies disappeared quickly, leaving only a few remains of bones. José Bretón remained by the stake until 5:30 p.m., fueling it with diesel oil, an accelerator, in order to keep the temperature high enough to completely scorch and make his children's corpses disappear. Right after, José Bretón drove to the neighborhood of the City of Children. At 6:01 p.m., he parked at about 300 meters distance. He texted his brother Raphael Breton, making him believe that he was with his children near the park, and then did the same with their mother, who called him from her house. When José Bretón thought that enough time had passed to make the fictional disappearance of his children credible, he called his brother Raphael at 6:18 p.m., telling him that his children were lost. He made several phone calls to some relatives, thus making his brother and his brother-in-law go to the playground to start the search. Around 6:41 p.m., José Bretón called the Spanish emergency number 112 and notified the authorities of the disappearance of his children, provoking the intervention of the police. He went to the Córdoba police station at 8:43 p.m. to file a report of disappearance. Thereupon, the judicial proceedings started. Controversy over the bones. In one of the first reports of the judicial investigation, Josefina Lamas, the forensic anthropologist of the scientific police who analyzed the remains of the bones found in the bonfire of Las Quemadillas, deduced that those bones corresponded to the remains of animals, specifically rodents and small carnivores. This report substantially delayed the resolution of the case. The mother of the children, Ruth Ortiz, requested a second expert report by the anthropologist Francisco Etxeberria, who revealed the existence of human bone fragments, which could correspond to 2- and 6-year-old children, in the remnants of the bonfire. A third analysis carried out by José María Bermúdez de Castro confirmed that the remains were human. As a result, Josefina Lamas was dismissed and the investigation concluded. Chain of custody questioned. During the investigation of the case by the judge José Luis Rodríguez Lanes, some errors came to light in the chain of custody of the legal evidence related to the remains collected in the bonfire of Las Quemadillas. These remains were sent from Córdoba to Madrid for their study by the forensic anthropologists of the UDEV, Unit of Specialized and Violent Crimes. When Judge Rodríguez Lanes called to testify Josefina Lamas after the refutation of her preliminary report and her retraction, he proceeded to show different images of the evidence. Lamas declared the sample number 8 missing in the photographs. The hypothetical rupture of the chain of custody of the evidence was one of the fundamental lines of the defense of José Bretón in the trial. Serafín Castro, the chief commissioner of the UDEV at that time, stated at the trial that sample number 8 could have been, for its state, disintegrated.